currently under the plan, if you have dementia, Alzheimer's, anything like that, Medicaid doesn't cover it.
Say in New Jersey, it's average 10, 12, 15,000 a month. It's even double potentially.
It is a huge expense that I don't think people fully realize that's out there. My uncle and my dad, they all dipped into their savings and their retirement to pay for his care because nobody talked to them. I am super passionate about it because neither one of those things had to happen.
Welcome to Talking Retirement, brought to you by NJ Life and Health. I'm your host, Ken Connolly, and each week we sit down with fascinating guests who share their insights, experiences, and expert advice to help you make the most of your golden years. Today's guest is Aaron Miller. Aaron is an attorney and the owner of Miller Law Office, PLLC. Aaron today shares the personal stories with his own family that led him to help seniors and get into elder law, how to plan an estate and leave a legacy that matters, navigating Medicaid benefits, specifically what it does and does not cover, and fighting senior scams in the age of AI. Aaron is an amazing guest with a lot of empathy and a lot of insight. You're not going to want to miss this incredible episode.
You almost quit law at one point and pivoted into estate law. How exactly did that happen?
The law school that I went to trains people to be trial attorneys, which is something I really wanted to do. And I did that for a number of years, and I realized that while I loved being in the courtroom, loved talking with juries, direct examination, cross-examination, talking to judges, all that stuff, what I hated was the kind of the beating of your chest and kind of how to prove how tough you are. And you're going to, kick their butt at trial. And most cases never actually got to trial. And I got super burned out on that. And one of the problems that I have, I guess, is I don't like to be wrong. Somebody would tell me I'm wrong about something, and I would think about it and just kind of run different scenarios in my head. And I realized I was starting to become a real angry and bitter person because I couldn't turn it off. So when I would go home, because it'd be this thing in the back of my mind that's like really irritating me, I'd start snapping at my wife and my kids. And I just realized I couldn't do that. It really came to a head one day. We were in trial. I forget when trial was set, but I sent some questions to the other side. We call that discovery. So we're discovering kind of what their position is. And I did some calculations, and I realized this is going to be due like the day after Christmas. And I was like super stoked. I was super excited because, all right, that means I ruined somebody's Christmas on the other side. And that was, that was the goal. And I was really excited for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And then it just hit me. It's like, what am I doing? I don't want to be that way. I just realized that was not how I wanted to practice law, to live my life. I had one child before went to law school, had one in the middle of law school, one right afterwards. And I'm like, they didn't sign up for an absentee, angry father. And I knew if I didn't make a change, I wasn't going to be married for very much longer. I looked around and realized I really enjoy working with seniors and found estate planning and just found my niche. Now I get to make a huge difference in people's lives. And we're not fighting. We're coming together, and we're really creating legacies for families. And I absolutely love that.
It's awesome that you had the wherewithal to say, hey, this isn't working for me. I'm becoming an angry person. Do you find people in your profession sometimes never get that realization and they just keep hammering away in a bad way?
The law is an amazing profession, and I absolutely love it. It's not for everybody. I mean, it's very, very stressful. I think some people might get into it because they think it's a path to making a lot of money. I mean, it can be, but for the vast majority of us, that's not the case. I think sometimes people, they were probably smart all their lives, and they have people that told them you'd make a good lawyer. That's what happened to me. And when I was a kid, my dad would let me stay up late sometimes, and we'd watch Perry Mason. And it was about half an hour after my bedtime. He would always tell, you'd make a good lawyer because I mean, I guess I like to argue. I don't know. But it's a great profession. I absolutely love it, but it's a lot. It can be a lot more stressful than people realize.
And so now that you're in estate law, everything's calmer. Everything's good.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, it's at the end of the day, it's making a huge difference in families. The weight that comes off of people's shoulders. I mean, you could see it when we get everything designed. We don't even necessarily have to have everything signed yet, but just the fact that they've turned it over to us, and they've done all they could, and they feel and look so much lighter when they're done.
We've been lucky enough to talk to some great estate lawyers. It is such an underrated branch of the legal profession and something so necessary. So, what are some of the stresses people come to you with? And then what's your process to helping alleviate them?
Well, number one, nobody thinks they're going to die right away. This is something that people feel like they can put off. So if somebody's coming to us, usually it's kind of been in the back of their mind for a while and they kind of want to do it unless something's happened either to them or to a family member, or maybe just see somebody down the street. A lot of times they do put it off. A lot of times people are concerned about their children's ability to manage money, and they don't want to leave them a whole bunch of money that the kids are just gonna blow. I represent a lot of families with young kids, and so that's easy. We don't want to make sure that those kids are protected. So if something happens to mom and dad, we have the structure in place, and hopefully they've got the financial means or insurance or something like that. Sometimes families are particularly second marriage, and different states treat it differently. But in Texas, if you have a spouse that has children from outside of your marriage, then when that spouse dies, those kids inherit. And that can be a huge problem. A number of years ago, I got a call one day. It was a Wednesday afternoon, about 4:45. This lady, who was a client of mine, her mom was in the car, and they had just left the title company. Mom was about to sell her house. In fact, it was Wednesday. She was going to sell her house on a Friday. And the title company realized that her husband, who was still on the title of the house, had passed away about 10 years ago. And he had some children from his first marriage. And so what they told her was, well, when we sell this house, those kids are going to get half of the proceeds. She was shocked. Number one, he had a will, and which was true. He did. He absolutely had a will. And she said, and she got everything. And she didn't realize that she had to probate that will. Mm-hmm. And because she didn't do it within the 4 years, that will really wasn't effective anymore. And that meant the law of it was called intestate succession, the law that applies if you don't have an estate plan. That meant that his kids, actually his only child, was going to get half of the money. What was really upsetting, the husband, they disinherited his son because the son many years earlier had sued him and his wife, the lady that was calling. They didn't pay for his college, and he felt like they should. So they specifically cut him out, and then all of a sudden he's going to be getting this money. The idea is there's laws that apply, and people, particularly in second marriages, definitely should make sure that they get their estate planning done. So yeah, lots of different scenarios, lots of different things that we can do.
I think one of the things that we talked about in our initial conversation was with estate planning, having long-term care plans, because it is so expensive. You can burn through your assets incredibly quickly. So what are some of the strategies you use with your clients to help them with long-term care? Because we find as insurance professionals, there aren't a lot of great options for insurance for it. So how do you help your clients and make sure they have the care that they need?
Yeah, that's really a great point. When I prefer long-term care insurance, in fact, if you can get it. And I know that's a term of art for you. And what I mean by that is, if there's some sort of long-term care insurance is traditional, where you pay a fee, an annual or a monthly fee, and if you use it, great. If you don't, then traditionally you would lose it. I know there's new products out there that are based on annuities or whole life insurance that can help pay for disability planning. So if you get sick and need to go to a nursing home or assisted living or even at-home care, it can pay for it. That's my absolute favorite way to do it. The next best way to do it is we can prepare for government benefits. There are certain government benefits out there for people to get long-term nursing home care, for example. That's a Medicaid benefit. A lot of people think Medicaid is for the poor, but it's really how the middle class pays for long-term care. What we do is to help prepare. Ideally, we've done this 5 years before someone needs any care, is create a special Medicaid compliant Medicaid asset protection trust. It's an irrevocable trust. Mom and dad cannot be the beneficiaries of that trust. Different states allow them to be the trustees or not, just depends on where you are. But you park that money into the trust. You go 5 years, hope you don't need it within the 5 years. And after that, the money is off the table. It's not part of the countable asset. So we're able to protect a lot of money that way. Worst case scenario, different states do things differently, but in Texas, even if we haven't done pre-planning, pre-planning is the better way to go, but if we haven't done pre-planning for husband and wife, we can still protect the majority of the assets with different things through like a Medicaid compliant annuity and some other things that we do. My mother retired from the state of Alaska at the age of 62 years, and she had the opportunity to buy long-term care insurance for her and my dad. I don't remember if it was $200 a month for each of them or together $200 a month, but they decided that they couldn't afford it. And about 4 or 5 years later, we had to put my mother into a memory care facility. They lived in Fairbanks, Alaska. It was February, March, sometime. I would check to think it was February. There was snow on the ground, and my mother locked herself out of the house. She took the dog for a walk and came back. And my dad put a combination lock, like one of those push button combinations. And he had a sign on it that says the combo is the year you were born. She couldn't remember. And thankfully, one of the neighbors found her and brought her in, but it could have been tragic. We took her out of the state of Alaska. She went to go live with my sister in Austin, and that's where she lived for a while until she progressed to a point where she started hitting my sister. And that really caused a lot of problems. My sister didn't want to do it, but I told her, look, we've got to put her in some sort of memory care. And because she didn't have long-term care insurance, she was paying like $7,500 a month. And that's a lot of money. And in different states, different areas, it's even more.
Yeah, so, I was going to say in New Jersey, it's average 10, 12, 15,000 a month. It's even double potentially.
It is a huge expense that I don't think people fully realize that's out there. And it's one of those things where most of us are going to need some sort of care. And what I love about long-term care insurance is on the legal side, I can get somebody in a nursing home on Medicaid, but that's a Medicaid benefit. It's not really a memory care or assisted living. But what long-term care insurance or whatever form it is, it does help pay for at-home care, for assisted living, anything like that. Just and try to keep you out of the nursing homes as long as possible.
We've been finding a lot of our clients really want to age at home and have a nurse at home, which in many cases is actually cheaper too by quite a bit. I know at least in New Jersey, an in-home nurse is like half the cost of going to a nursing home. It's a great way for people to get the help they need without having to make the seemingly final transition to a nursing home. Is Texas a relatively Medicaid friendly state? Like for instance, New York, it's pretty easy to get Medicaid, but New Jersey, it's really, really hard. What are the standards for Texas Medicaid?
I mean, if you know the rules, it's pretty easy. You just have to know how to convert from countable to non-countable. There's different things that are not countable. For example, a house is not going to be countable for Medicaid in Texas, although in Texas, we would also put in place what's called a ladybird deed or a transfer on death deed. Not every state allows that. It depends on if your state is what we call an enhanced recovery state or not. And that refers to Medicaid estate recovery after you pass away. So with the ladybird deed, what that does is that transfers the house instantaneously by operation of law immediately upon the death of the person that created the ladybird deed, and it goes to the beneficiaries. It goes outside of the probate process, and in Texas, they don't go after those assets.
Really?
They do.
I was going to say New Jersey, they do. That's pretty cool. In Texas, they don't.
So ladybird deeds don't work in every state, but the states that do, they're a fantastic tool. Yeah. But things like retirement accounts are not countable here if they are kicking off RMDs, and if they're not, we can wrap it around an annuity, and then it's not countable. So yeah, I would say it's probably fairly friendly to get qualified. Yeah.
That's good to hear. I mean, people can get the care they need without losing the house and everything. I think one of the cool things is I can definitely feel the enthusiasm from you, Aaron, and I can see how much you enjoy it. But what exactly was the transition like from trial attorney to estate planning? Like, how did you find out that estate planning was even something you wanted to do?
I looked around. Honestly, I didn't even know if I was going to stay in the law. I mean, I love the law. I love being a lawyer, but I just needed to do something else. I did find there's a whole lot more now than there was back then, but I did find a lady who helps people transition from litigation attorneys, trial attorneys, to doing estate planning. And originally it was for families with young kids, which I enjoyed. But when I realized that there's an area of the law called elder law that specifically works with seniors, there are so many people taking advantage of seniors, and there's so much bad information out there. I realized this was the area of law I needed to practice. When I was a kid, we'd go and go visit my grandparents. They lived in Mesa, Arizona, or at least they did during the winter months. Every Christmas we'd go there, and we would go to the senior centers, the nursing homes there, and we just talked with the seniors. I loved doing that. I loved listening to their stories. One of my favorite things to do is read biographies, because I like to hear how other people live their life and what they've learned. And this was like living biographies. I get to listen to them. And I still love that. I still love talking with seniors. I'll get some of my older clients in. They'll tell stories, and I have to be careful, because I can spend a long time just listening to them. One of the reasons why I love doing things like these podcasts is when I was a kid, my grandmother, we were visiting my grandparents in Montrose, Colorado, and the last night we were there, my grandmother had a heart attack, and my dad told me later he held her in his arms and he thought he'd lost her. And I don't know if this really triggered this or not, but after about a year or so, my dad got a call and said, from my grandfather. My grandfather said he had to put his wife, my grandmother, in a nursing home. Mm. And I know, just because of talking with my clients, that had to have been the worst day of his life. Mm-hmm. But nobody talked to him about the different ways to pay for care. And so every month he went down to the nursing home, wrote a check, pulled out his wallet, whatever he did, and he paid for her care. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did for the next 10 years of his life. And he basically eliminated his savings, spent through if he had any retirement, he spent through that. They didn't have anything. And when my grandmother passed away, my grandfather, I think it was 3 to 5 years, I don't remember exactly, but then he needed a nursing home care. Well, nobody in the family lived in that area anymore. We all lived over in the Fort Worth, Arlington area. And so they brought my grandfather down to a nursing home in Texas, in Arlington. And my aunt, my uncle, and my dad, they all dipped into their savings and their retirement to pay for his care, because nobody talked to them about the different ways to pay for care. So that's why I am super passionate about it, because neither one of those things had to happen. We didn't have to dip into the savings. We didn't have to dip into the family's retirement. My father is still dealing with the fallout of that right now. So it's many years later. So I am very passionate about it, but I really, really want to educate people on what's available.
It's interesting because it almost feels like there's this cycle where it's your grandma, your grandfather has to pay for your grandma's nursing home, and that clears out his savings. And then, your grandfather doesn't have any savings, which means your parents have to clear out their savings. And then it kind of creates this chain reaction where like everyone doesn't have the retirement they need because of that. How do you educate people on these topics? Because we find it so hard to break through to people and just tell them this is going to happen and that you're going to have to plan for it. So how do you educate people on this so they don't run into the situation that your family did?
Yeah, it's tough because, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you don't know that you have to go get this information. So, I do things like doing podcasts. We do workshops. I try to have a lot of videos on my website. And then once they come in, if I can get in front of them, we talk about the different things, different ways to pay. I think the biggest shock that people have is when you get into a full-on nursing home, just what the cost is. Mm-hmm. And hopefully somebody in the nursing home says, hey, you should go talk to an elder law attorney on how to get this, how to get help. Because you just don't know. You don't know what's available. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think the awareness is starting to pop up a little bit more because we all have stories where like you experienced where someone's like they cleared out their whole life savings in the nursing home. So it's unfortunate that it's probably taken a decade or two for the word to get out, but it does feel like it's starting to be more on top of mind. Do you find people are more active and more looking out for it these days because of that reason? Like they've seen it firsthand?
We're having, I think they call it the silver tsunami. We have so many more people who are retiring. I think you're right. I think we're probably know more about it than we used to, just because we're exposed to it more. We run across it more than we used to. But I still think there's a real need out there for people to be educated, to understand what's available and really what the pitfalls are.
Earlier in the podcast, you did talk a lot about how you wanted to stop seniors from getting taken advantage of, families from getting taken advantage of. What are some ways you see seniors getting taken advantage of these days, like some scams or some, lack of knowledge that really ends up hurting people in the long run? There's
just a ton of scams, and then with the advent of AI that can mimic people's voices on the phone, I think, unfortunately, it's just going to get worse. I remember getting a call from my uncle many years ago. He got a call, quote unquote, from my cousin, who was allegedly traveling through Arkansas. My cousin, I've never actually met him. He's lived in Germany my entire life. And as far as I know, doesn't come over to the United States. But my uncle got a call from him, and he needed money. And he called me to help raise the money. And he was convinced. He was absolutely convinced that this was my cousin. I said, well, tell you what, why don't you call my aunt, my cousin's mom, and just check, see if he's even in the United States. Called back and says, well, I feel kind of stupid. Yeah, you're right. This was a scam. And he was about that close to sending some money. And I think people shouldn't be ashamed of that if they do get scammed or if they get close to scam, because these are professionals. Mm-hmm. That's all they do. And it's frightening to think, like, if they put 1/10 of that effort into doing something good that they do into this.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd be unstoppable, but they don't. They choose to do this. So phone scams are just a terrible thing, and I think it's going to get worse with AI, where we could actually mimic someone's voice. And I don't really know what the solution to that is. There's other scams not particularly directed to seniors. I know there's a lot of scams revolving if you sell your house, there'll be people sending messages to the title company to transfer that money to some other account, but they're pretending they're you. It's just a terrible thing. But I think people that take advantage of seniors like that just have a special place in hell, if you ask me.
Yeah, I 100% agree. One of the interesting things I saw was, I think this company in England created an AI grandma that messed with scammers. So it was the reverse, where they were calling thinking they were scamming a grandma, but the grandma just kept them on loop for hours and hours. And it was incredibly realistic. So I was like, it's pretty cool. They're getting a taste of their own medicine.
Taste of their own medicine. Yeah, that's not bad. I like that.
Yeah. And they if you ever get a chance, look up the video, because just listening to them, it's so funny. Like
yeah.
Great.
That's awesome. I will definitely have to do that.
So you used to deal quite a bit with the VA, but you've been pulling back a little bit. Can you talk about what you used to do and why you've had to pull back over the years?
Yeah, there's a really cool benefit for veterans who served 90 days active duty, at least one day during a time of war. It's called VA Aid and Attendance. That's not the technical name for it, but that's what most people call it. And what that is that it can help pay for nursing home care, but although it's not usually enough to do that. But it's really helpful for at-home care or assisted living. A veteran who's married is about $2,000 a month that they might be able to get qualified for. What I love about that benefit is it does help pay when like nursing on Medicaid wouldn't. It's a really cool benefit. There's a few tests that you have to qualify. You have to have, like I said, active duty 90 days, one day during a time of war. You have to have a discharge that's other than dishonorable. So even if it's not like a regular full discharge, as long as it's not a dishonorable discharge, you can get qualified. There's certain income and asset requirements as well. What's really cool is if the veteran's passed away, the surviving spouse has a potential benefit as well, as long as the spouse was married to the veteran at the time that they passed and generally hasn't remarried. But they could also get some care. Now it's not as much money, but it is nice. I used to do a lot of it. Unfortunately, Congress made it really, really hard for me to help veterans. They've never allowed me to charge the veterans for that service, which is fine. But they changed the rules and they actively made it harder for people to get qualified. For example, it used to not have what's called a look-back test, which means if you've given any money away for a certain period of time, it would cause you to not be eligible for a while for this benefit. And it actually disproportionately affects veterans versus spouses. You can give away the same amount of money. It affects the veteran less. It's a longer period for the spouse. It's crazy, but because of that, because they made it so difficult, unfortunately, I don't personally, as of right now, do VA applications anymore. But I was an accredited attorney with the VA. I absolutely loved helping the veterans. It's just, unfortunately, just made it too hard to do it.
Yeah, that's a bummer that you actively want to help and you were helping people and Congress said, you know what, these veterans don't really need those benefits or whatever it is. Like, it's just crazy that they put a roadblock like that in there. Like, why would they do that?
Well, they thought they were helping the veterans. Even though we're not supposed to charge, and I never did, there are non-attorney people that help, caught themselves veterans benefits consultants. And they were charging. And so the Congress called them pension poachers and just lumped us all in together. And they just made it very difficult to help people. So, which is unfortunate, but it's a great benefit. If any of the listeners know of a family member that would qualify, it's really helpful for them. It's a really helpful benefit.
Yeah, honestly, the more help for the veterans, the better. Something we talked about on our initial talk that is just now coming back to me is Medicaid and the changes that might happen. Obviously, we don't have to get political by any sense, but just speaking of potential cuts to Medicaid or how Medicaid would be restructured under this administration, I believe you mentioned something about block grants. Like, where do you kind of see the future of Medicaid given what's happening right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. I know that when President Trump's first term, during his first term, that they were talking about block grants. And what that meant was each state would get a lump sum of money, and then each state would decide how to allocate that within their state between the different Medicaid programs. You know, we're talking about Medicaid, nursing home Medicaid for seniors, but WIC, Women's Infants and Children Medicaid also is lumped in that. There's like, I don't know, probably 200 or 300 different types of Medicaid benefit. I don't know. I know that the President Trump, at least as of the recording now, just introduced a budget into Congress. Haven't had a chance to look at it and see what all is in there. From my understanding, there's been cuts for everything except for military spending. So we'll have to see what that entails. Hopefully, we're not going to be throwing our seniors out on the streets.
I hope not. I mean, the whole idea of the block grant, I mean, does that just mean you get a set amount of money, but there's no general federal guidelines or anything like that? Because I know, for instance, with the Department of Education, they've been talking about block grants, and people fear that it would get rid of special education requirements, get rid of certain, Title IX requirements. Would that be what to expect during a block grant? There would just be less federal oversight? That
was my understanding, yeah. Is they just, here you go, here's this lump sum of money, and then you decide how you're going to divvy it up between the states. And I think from a federal perspective, you're going to save money that way because you know how much you're going to spend. Under the current plan, I don't think there is kind of a cap. I think, if you qualify, you get it. That was the idea is we need to cut money somewhere. And that's not an invalid point, right? I mean, the federal government doesn't have unlimited resources, even though we think they might. And so to be good stewards of the money, we do have to figure out and make policy decisions on where they go. But for me, it's hard to see it impact the seniors just because I have, such a deep love for those folks.
Yeah. So something I've been asking people recently, Aaron, towards the end is, you are in charge of HHS or whatever agency, you are kind of indirectly a part of, be it due to Medicaid or, maybe it's the American Bar Association or something. What are some changes you would like to see on a macro level if you could implement something like that? Like, what are some laws you would want to get put in place or some laws you'd want to remove?
Oh, that is a good question. I think probably making things a little bit more uniform across the country would be good. Different states have different rules on how they get qualified. Although that's not really, I don't know if that's going to really help each individual. What I really, really would love, actually, now that I think about it, is currently under the plan, if you have dementia, Alzheimer's, anything like that, Medicaid doesn't cover it. You could be in a memory care facility like my mother was. And I was waiting for her health to deteriorate to a point where we could move her over to a nursing home. Unfortunately, with her, it was within like 2 weeks, and then she passed. So we never really had the opportunity. But I think that's going to be the biggest problem. And I don't really know the answer to that because we have so many seniors that are so many more seniors now than we used to. Alzheimer's and dementia, memory issues have just exploded, and we don't really have a way to pay for that. So I don't know that the government can afford it either. So it's what do we do?
So it's like a service we need to give, but we also, it's just such an overwhelming burden on the system to take care of it. Yeah.
The fact that it's not being cared for now, I don't know if it's a policy decision or just an oversight. But yeah, if you go into a memory care facility, it's not covered by Medicaid. Now, some states do have some less than full Medicaid benefits. They do allocate for that. Most states don't. It's very, very difficult for the families to have to pay here $7,500 to you, up there, 10 to 12 or whatever it was. Yeah, $1,000 a month. It's unreal.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a good thing, but I'm glad that I know it now that memory care is separate from nursing homes and everything like that. It seems like it would all be one big bundle, but knowing it's not is pretty scary because even if you have Medicaid, you still need the memory care and everything. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah. It's one of those things where memory care is even worse because, like my grandmother, 10 years she was in a nursing home. And a lot of times our minds go, but our bodies are still healthy, relatively speaking. And so, yeah, there's just no good answers, unfortunately.
I don't envy the people that have to make these decisions and balance budgets while worried about taking care of people. It's a lot. We did talk a little bit about long-term care insurance. I know you said you are a big proponent of it. Maybe there are better products down in Texas than what we're used to, but we did get to talk a lot about hybrid policies. So can you tell the listeners a little bit about what hybrid insurance policies are?
Yeah, so I'm not an insurance agent, but my understanding is a hybrid is one that's based on either whole life insurance or maybe an annuity of some kind. The idea is there is a rider or a benefit so that if you need to go into some sort of long-term care, it'll pay for it. And the really cool part is if you don't use it, you can have beneficiaries designated. So it's not like under the old style use it or lose it system, which is what I have. I've got a policy I got when I was 35. It's use it or lose it, right? So if I pay this money and if I don't ever use it, and I hope I don't, it goes away. Now, the way I look at it personally is it's kind of like homeowners insurance. I pay the premium every year, and I'm not angry that I didn't have a fire last year and didn't get to use my insurance. So to me, it's the same way. But I really like those new products because they can really help. And the cool thing about those products is there's different ways you can structure it. You could have a lump sum, or you could do a lump sum and still have a annual or monthly premium on top of that. Just depends on kind of what type of benefits you have. People are worried about how expensive it is. And personally, I've never seen I've never seen an annual premium that costs more than 1 month of nursing home costs, but it's possible. I just really believe in some form of long-term care. It may not be perfect, but it's a way that we can help prepare. But a lot of times if you are, maybe it's too expensive, maybe you don't need the full $7,500. Maybe your income is enough, or maybe you want to use your income to supplement. But generally something is going to be better than nothing.
Well, Aaron, I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your empathy. I appreciate all the tips you've given. If people want to work with you, where can they find you?
We're on the web, aaronmillerlaw.com, AARONMillerlaw.com, and that's probably the best way.
I know you have some content out there, podcasts, videos on the website. Is that everything? Is everything on the website?
I want to say probably over 100 videos on the website. Or actually, I take that back. I used to. I had my website redesigned, but they're on. I have a YouTube channel. They're on that. I've got a link to the YouTube channel on the website, I believe. So,
Awesome.
but yeah, there's a ton of content.
Awesome. Well, I will link Aaron's website and YouTube channel down below. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us on Talking Retirement, and we'll talk to you soon.